Can I just advise that we've got a pretty full house in the room at the minute. Along with myself, we have the Vice Chair, Kelly Armstrong, we have Andy Allen, Mark Durkin, Sinead Innes and Johnny Buckley. And via teleconference, we have Fra McCann and Robin Newton. So I'll just remind members again that are on the telephones, if you can mute your phones whenever we're not speaking to you, and I will come to you to ask if you have any questions or comments to make as we go along. Okay, I'll move on then to agenda item 1, which is apologies. We don't have any of those. I'll move then to item number 2, which is chairperson's business. The first item on that is, members, you will recall that at last week's meeting we asked questions on the publication of the reclassification of housing associations consultation report and whether the department had sought or received information from ONS in relation to the bill. We've been provided with a departmental response and will receive a briefing at today's meeting, so I propose that we return to this item under chairperson's business after the our first two briefing sessions. Our members agreed with that, okay? Agreed. Second item is to advise members that the Minister has requested a meeting with myself and the clerk to take place tomorrow, and we're hoping that that's going to be a regular event, so that's a good news and positive. And then the third thing then is just to advise members that I was approached by Agenda NI for a question and answer article as chair of the committee. I've agreed the article and will circulate it to members for their information. I think there was another chair of another committee maybe as well was asked, so it's just to go into the Agenda NI magazine. So that will be circulated so members can see that. So I'll then move on to agenda item 3, which is draft minutes. You'll find these at page 6 of your meeting pack. Are members content with the minutes of the 17th of June as drafted?
Agreed.
Everybody content? Good. I'll move on then to agenda item number 4 then, which is matters arising. Members, you've been provided at page 12 with a copy of the latest report from the examiner of statutory rules. The examiner states that SR 2020-87, the Social Security Coronavirus Electronic Communications Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2020, breached the 21-day rule, but this was due to the Department's urgent response to the COVID-19 crisis. The examiner is content with the Department's explanation. Can I ask members, have they any comments, or are they content to note? Content? Okay, thank you. Then move on then to page 20. You've been provided with a response from the Minister of Education to the committee queries on preschool admissions process. Can I again ask members, are there any comments, or are they content to note that also? Content? Yeah? Thank you. Then at page 21, you've been provided with a departmental reply to the committee queries on additional council funding. Can I ask members again, any comments, or are they content to note that also? Content? Content. Thank you. Then at page 22, you'll see a reply from the BMA to committee queries on shielding letters. Can I again ask members, have they any comments, or are they content to note that also? Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Yes, Chair. I'm very aware that the Department of Communities has borne the cost of the food parcels, and it's very clear that the BMA have identified that the criteria used was the fact that the person has a pre-health condition. There was nothing on need there. I know that I've mentioned it a few times. There are people who are getting 2, 3, 4 parcels a week. And there are people who have family that are available to help them and don't need them. So I'm just wondering if moving forward we could perhaps write to the department to ask what is going to be done to prevent this duplication. There are lots of wonderful, absolutely wonderful community organisations on the ground who have been working through food banks and different community organisations who are asking, that they feel like they're wasting food bank parcels because they're giving them 2 and 3 times to people who are already getting something. So I think that there needs to be something worked out that if the shielders are going to be protected, that we check with those shielders, do they actually need those food parcels?
Okay, another comment, John?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair, and I would agree wholeheartedly with Kelly's comments. I did raise it as well at the last committee meeting that I felt that I understood the need to get this particular scheme out quick because there was a present need. But to my knowledge, I felt there was a lot of flaws within how it was delivered, both be it on a different council basis as well. I don't think there was a unity of process right across the board, with some councils probably, it was a lot easier to access food parcels than others. But I also agree with what Kelly said in terms of it seemed to be as though those that were receiving were maybe receiving in multiples, as opposed to trying to get to as many people as possible. So I did say it at the last committee, and I do believe it's something that we as a committee should be doing. It's right to ask questions and reflect upon how this scheme was administered, that potentially we could look towards a review of how, with the department, etc., and we could feed into that, how this scheme was administered, because if it comes a time, I hope not, sincerely, that we have to use such a scheme again, I would like to see a much more targeted approach to try and reach those that are, in need, that were maybe dropped through the system, because it seemed to be, it went along very much in many parts of our constituencies along traditional old community group lines, who do a fantastic job, but are by and large are mainly catered for, whereas some people that we really needed to target with this scheme were perhaps they weren't able to access food parcels, and you actually find that members of the general community were seeing to their needs in a much more general sense, as opposed to through a targeted scheme such as this. So it's just my suggestion that I think we should be looking towards a review of that scheme.
Any other comment? I mean, I know this came up at question time on Tuesday, and the Minister very much had said that any future boxes would be only going to those with continuing shielding letters. We know some of the shielding letters have been removed, but there are people still out there. So I get where you're coming from. I know my own party leader said it in an interview, this pandemic didn't come with a manual. So everybody just hit the ground running, and it was very much, this is what we need to do, and it was the right thing to do. I absolutely agree with you. Was it done perfectly? No, it wasn't. But that again was issues around shielding letters not going out until as little as 4 weeks ago. People were getting shielding letters who had were unfortunately could not avail of this. So yeah, I think it's good that we just ask. I think I asked the question of the Minister, was she content that the people in real need, who are the ones who are shielding, and I think we need to remember that some people thought because they were shielding they were entitled to it, but yet they had their daughter calling later that day with another food, with their shopping and everything else. So just because you're shielding isn't an automatic entitlement. It's people who are in the most need, and we need. I agree, though I certainly am content with what the Minister said on Tuesday along the further lines of this, but I do agree we maybe need to write just for clarification that is the case. Are members happy enough with that then? Yeah?
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead, Fra.
Sure, and I don't disagree with the bulk of what's been said, certainly by Johnny. But maybe if he could elaborate on what he is saying, what has he something in mind on the way we should be doing it? Because I think most councils, some may be a bit ahead of others in terms of organisational capabilities, and we need to be careful that we're not seen as criticising councils because of proactive approach to that here. I think that community groups are in a far better position, working with others of identifying and knowing the people in the area that need it. But I do agree that there was a discrepancy in how the letters went out, and a space in between some people getting and some people not getting.
I know certainly, Fra, from my own experience in my own area, the first couple of weeks, shielding letters had not been received, and community groups were given 70 or 100 food boxes and said, okay, deliver those to people in your community. And then there was an expectancy then from some people going forward who did not receive shielding letters, but there was an expectancy because they received them from the beginning. And I think it put the councils in a bit of a position at that stage because it wasn't up to them, it was the community groups. And 9 times out of 10, community groups got it right. Absolutely, they did. They were brilliant. But there were a few teething problems. But again, as I said, this did not come with a manual. This pandemic. So I think there was bound to be problems along the way with various things that have been done across all departments. But Johnny, did you want to come back? Yeah, go ahead.
My comment in relation to councils was that, from what I see, and obviously I operate maybe over a couple of councils, that people with similar situations were having an easy or access to different councils for food boxes. I'm not saying that this is a particular fault of any individual council. All I'm saying is that I believe in some cases their interpretation of how they should deliver the service and those that were entitled, I think there was a difference across the board. As the chair has rightly pointed out, we were in a pandemic. There was a need to get this done quickly, but we have to ensure that there is equal opportunity for those right across the board that can access this service, and that's something that I believe probably needs to be looked at going forward, that we can ensure that those most in need receive something such as this, and that was my concern.
Okay, members, are you happy enough then that we move on from that item? Yeah? Okay, thank you. We're going to then, just one more issue under matters arising, and that's at page 24, and you'll see the departmental reply to the committee queries on universal credit. Can I ask members again, have they any comments, or are they content to note that? Kelly, go ahead.
I noted the final paragraph on page 25, where I absolutely appreciate what the department has said here, that their focus has been on the response to COVID-19, but they have mentioned themselves that they are advising that proposals for the review of the new decade new approach and the welfare mitigations are being finalised, and it's hoped that a formal announcement on how this will be taken forward will be made in the coming weeks. I appreciate that there will be a review, and how they're going to review is being finalised. It would be useful, I think, as a committee if we had access to that information as well. We may have a feeling or want to contribute to what they're considering within the review.
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with you. So if we could write then and ask the question on that as well. Anything else on that issue? No, members? Okay. So are members content then further to note that then? I'll move on to agenda item number 5 then, which is the long-awaited departmental briefing on the outcome of the Liquor Licensing Laws Survey Report. Members have been provided with papers starting at page 27 of your packs. And can I welcome Liam Quinn and Anthony Carlton and Carol Reid, who are there via teleconferencing. Can I then ask Liam if you'd like to begin your briefing, please? Oh, just before we do, Liam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Just one moment before we do that. Can I just ask members, have they got anything to declare on any of the issues that are today?
I declare an interest on that family.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, Liam, go ahead.
Okay, Chair, thanks very much. First of all, thanks for the invitation to brief the committee today. I'll start off by going over the background to this issue, and I'll talk a bit about the recent consultation, and my colleague Carol Reid will then talk about the Minister's proposals for the reform of licensing law. We'll take questions at the end, if that's acceptable, Chair.
Yep, go ahead, no problem.
The issue of licensing law, as a lot of you will know, has been on the political agenda for about 10 years, and for various reasons has not been delivered to date. The latest attempt at reform was the 2016 bill, which was nearing completion of the committee stage when the Assembly was dissolved in January 2017. The consultation on licensing for the 2016 bill took place in 2012, and with no minister in post, my permanent secretary decided we should consult on licensing again to update our evidence base, just in anticipation of ministers returning. So last year we issued a consultation. The consultation contained no proposals because we didn't have a minister. It was an open call for evidence, and 1,500 people and organisations replied to the consultation. The outcome report simply records what the views of the respondees were, and I think it's fair to say that there were no surprises in the responses. As officials, we would keep in touch with stakeholders, and the issues they raised were all familiar to us. The draft report was then shared with the committee in April, and the department intends to publish the report in coming days, subject to the views of the committee. So, having read the draft outcome report and taken advice from officials, the Minister has decided to take forward a bill. The bill will contain a balanced set of proposals aimed at reducing alcohol-related harm, but also assisting the hospitality sector at this particularly difficult time. So I'll now ask Carol to take members through the various proposed changes to the law.
Hello.
Hi, Carol, go ahead.
Hi, Chair. Thank you very much. I'll begin with the policies then, which were included in the 2016 bill. For members who haven't sat in this committee before, I'll identify any changes then to those proposals as we go along, if that's okay.
Yep.
So the first one is Easter opening hours. This applies to licensed premises and to registered clubs, and the proposal here is to remove all restrictions over the Easter weekend. So the 2016 bill proposed the removal of the restrictions on the Thursday before Good Friday only. Moving on to additional permitted hours then, and this is where premises can apply to courts for late opening to 1 a.m. The proposal here is to allow 2 a.m. opening up to 104 nights per year, which is the equivalent of 2 per week. And the 2016 bill proposal was for the 2 a.m. opening for 12 nights. For smaller premises then, who can apply to the police for late opening, they can do that up to 20 nights per year, and the proposal is to increase that to 85, and that's in line with registered clubs. Moving on to the extension of drinking up time, this applies to licensed premises and to registered clubs again, and the proposal is to increase drinking up time from 30 minutes to 1 hour, and the intention here is to allow more gradual dispersal from larger premises. Moving on then to alignment of liquor and entertainment licences, and in order to address concerns around the illegal sale of alcoholic drinks and drug use as well in venues where entertainment continues beyond permitted hours that is set in the liquor licence, the Minister is proposing to prohibit entertainment from continuing beyond the latest time that you can so basically drinking up time. Children's certificates then, this applies to licensed premises and registered clubs, and the proposal here is to remove the current administrative burden only of obtaining a children's certificate from the court. It's important to note here then that all safeguards and conditions pertaining to the protection of young people remain. Underage functions, this applies to licensed premises and to registered clubs also, and the proposal here is to allow young people to remain on the premises beyond the current permitted time of 9:30 p.m. to attend an underage function, so for example a school formal, but that's on a strict condition that there is no availability of alcoholic drinks in that area where the underage function is taking place. The restrictions on advertising off-sales drinks promotions, with the policy intent of denormalising the purchase of alcoholic drinks as part of the weekly grocery shop, and also to reduce impulse buys, the proposal here is to prohibit these advertisements within 200 metres of any off-sales premises. So moving on to delivery of alcohol to young people, and the proposal here is to prohibit under 18s from accepting deliveries of alcoholic drinks other than where that delivery takes place at their own place of employment. So for restaurants and guest houses, the proposal is to require a licensee to display a notice which sets out their conditions for selling alcoholic drinks. So for example, the notice would state that the sale of alcoholic drinks in a restaurant is ancillary to a main table meal and that it must be paid for at the same time and on the same bill as the food. So the next proposal is, it's pretty self-explanatory, that to prohibit the sale of alcoholic drinks via self-service and vending machines. It applies to licensed clubs, licensed premises and registered clubs, and the policy intent here is to stop any sales of alcoholic drinks taking place unsupervised. So for codes of practice then, this applies to licensed premises and registered clubs also, and currently there's only a voluntary code in existence. The proposal is to allow the department to formally approve an industry code, and the intention is then that the knowledge of that code and adherence to that code would affect the grant or renewal of a licence or registration. So for registered clubs then, and the extension of premises and sporting clubs, the proposal is to allow that on 6 occasions a year where a sporting club could extend the area where they supply alcoholic drinks, so beyond the clubhouse. The idea here is, so, for a sporting club premises, they could erect a marquee in the car park for Captain's or Ladies' Day. For young people in sporting clubs then, they can currently remain in the bar area until 10 p.m. The proposal is twofold here. One, to extend this to 11 p.m. for the young person to attend an award ceremony once per year, and then extend it to 11 p.m. over summer months. So that would be the 1st of June until the 31st of August. Then again, sticking with registered clubs and restrictions on their advertisement, the proposal here is to remove the current restriction on publicly advertising functions, provided that those ads clearly state that the function is for members and guests only. So that covers the policies that were included in the 2016 bill. I'll move on now to those which were developed after the introduction of that bill, that were consulted on last year and that Minister wants to move forward. So the first proposal is to introduce a new category of licence for local producers of alcoholic drinks. And this will allow those producers to sell their own products direct to the public in limited circumstances. Then licensed racetracks. So currently racetracks such as Drumbo, they can't sell alcoholic drinks on a Sunday, and the proposal is to remove that prohibition. The next proposal is to allow the department to designate an event as a major event, which will then allow the permitted hours for that event to be varied. This is to address reports from organisers of prestigious events such as, for example, the MTV European Music Awards, or even last year's 140th Open that was held at Royal Portrush. And the reports were that the licensing laws here are restrictive and in some cases had a negative impact on the success of their event. So the next proposal is to allow young people to remain on licensed premises and registered clubs beyond the current restrictions in terms of time to attend a private function. Now, this is only where they are accompanied by an adult and where a substantial meal is provided. So moving on then, the next proposal relates to the remote sale of alcoholic drinks, and this proposal is to clarify in law that where a sale takes place online, the place of dispatch must be licensed. And Minister is also proposing to prohibit the collection or redemption of loyalty points for the purchase of alcoholic drinks. And this comes back to alcoholic drinks. They're not an ordinary grocery product, and the aim is to reduce harm caused by the misuse of alcohol. The next proposal relates to body corporates. So under current law, body corporates can be licensees as well as individuals. But unlike individual licensees, there's no requirement for the directors of a body corporate to notify the court of any convictions. So the proposal here is to extend that requirement to include directors of body corporates to make that notification to the court. And the final policy proposal relates to occasional licences. So currently the law doesn't allow conditions to be placed on an occasional licence unless a previous function at exactly the same place has caused undue inconvenience. And the proposal here is to allow conditions to be placed on a licence with sanctions then for non-compliance. And this is especially important where young people are in attendance at a function. So that's a maybe very quick run through, Chair. And as Liam said, we're happy to take any questions then.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Liam. I know Fra will be of the same opinion. It seems like an awfully long time ago when we first, in a previous committee here, looked at the liquor licensing. So, as I said, this is very welcome. And again, it's very welcome and it's timely as well, because we know that the hospitality industry is going to face numerous challenges after this pandemic, and we need to be helping them in any way we can, and this will go some way. I just have a few questions, again, I welcome the amendments that the Minister is putting, or proposals, some extra proposals the Minister is putting down, because some of those just make perfect sense and really should have been in it in the first place. Can I just ask then, just a couple of things. The remote sale of alcohol, where you said that if an order is placed online, the place of dispatch must be licensed. Now, I live in the Greater Belfast area, where quite often it's taxi drivers are delivering alcohol to people's houses. What sort of position does that put the likes of taxi drivers in, where you will have young people who will phone to do an online order? It certainly happens in Greater Belfast. I'm sure it happens further afield as well. And can I just ask that one first, if there's anything there that, you know, that any advice or what is going to be done with taxi drivers and the like, because we don't want to put them in the position as well.
Chair, I'll take that one. The issue about taxis delivering alcoholic drinks, it's a difficult one. Normally, drinks should be delivered by the licence holder from their own premises. So if a taxi firm is keeping a supply of drink in their depot and then delivering it, that would be illegal. If, on the other hand, they were asked by someone to collect their groceries for them or something of that nature, that can be legal, providing the taxi driver is not charging a premium on the drink. They can charge for the taxi fare, but they can't be making profit out of the drink because they don't have a licence to sell drink. So it's not straightforward, and part of what this change will do will clarify the whole law around remote sales. When the law was last updated back in 1996, remote sales and internet sales and so on just didn't exist.
Yeah, I'm not blaming taxi drivers in any way, because I know there are plenty of adults as well that will phone a taxi company to deliver alcohol, cigarettes, whatever else that they need at that time. It's just, I just don't want them. I want them to feel that they have a certain protection. That's the only reason why I brought it up. I just want to then also ask about, under the alignment of liquor and entertainment licences, for many of us, we sat in councils, many of our members here sat in councils for years, where you would have had, someone would have applied for an entertainment licence, and the council had had many major complaints, the police had been involved, whatever else, but the liquor licence had been granted by the court, and the councils then felt that they had no jurisdiction then to go against what the courts had decided on. I mean, I know, because I know in North Belfast, I know of one pub especially, that has caused major problems where the licence has went round every member of the family in order to overcome issues around obtaining a licence. Is there any, will this tighten up on that in any way?
Well, this proposal, Chair, will align the entertainment and licensing, the liquor licensing regimes. It'll mean that if entertainment goes on beyond the drinking up time, the latest drinking up time, well then the liquor licence, the late extension past 11 p.m. won't have effect. So there's really no point in someone applying for an entertainment licence past drinking up time if this legislation goes through, or this proposal goes through.
Just again, just follow up on that. What has there been consultation with the local councils around this issue to do with the alignment? Because we know whenever some things go to council then for approval, there is so much concern and so much uproar amongst people who live in the vicinity because of antisocial behaviour or whatever else it might be, and councils have no choice but to grant entertainment licence. So it's just to ask, has there been consultation with our local, with the 11 councils around this, on this issue?
Yes, Chair, it was consulted on both occasions, 2012 and then again last year. And of course the council representatives from the councils came to the committee in 2016 to explain their position there too.
Okay, and again then, for those local alcoholic drinks producers, I very much welcome that as well. I've been to many events over the years where they have been unable to sell their own alcohol without a licence of another premises actually obtaining a licence in order for them to do that, should that be at a Christmas community event or whatever that might be. So this is very welcome news for them as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to open up the floor then for some questions, and I'm going to ask Sinead, you're down first to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks to Liam and Carol for the presentation. And I think Carol really nailed it on the head there when she said that, you know, the current position is prohibitive, you know, and it's preventing us from being able to attract the sorts of the sorts of events that we want to, that will help boost our tourism product here. So I think what's being proposed here really reflects the modernity that, you know, the tourism industry, the hospitality industry, and the wider public are crying out for. I suppose, following on from your last point, Chair, you know, I would like just a couple of points of clarity around the local alcoholic producers. So, so we have quite a growing craft brewery industry in South Down, and I know that's the same across the north. So one of the big stumbling blocks for them is that, you know, obviously they have to be attached to another licensed premises, and the fee for them to get that additional license to sell the product at the brewery is, I think it's somewhere in the region of 25,000. So it's quite expensive, considering some of these craft breweries are really, you know, they're really micro. And I know in South Down that there's a growing there's a growing wish for us to develop our tourism product around these. And I know some tour buses have pulled up to breweries, knocked the door, and been told, sorry, we can't do that. So I just have a question around the limited circumstances, what they would be, because I know the craft brewery industry are quite keen to offer those tours, to offer tasters. Obviously, nobody's wanting to usurp or to act outside their license and just pretty much act as a bar, a de facto bar. But I think we have to be able to, we have to allow those craft breweries to be able to sell their product to tourists and to the general public who might want to come and have a look inside. So my question is around the fee for that license. I hope it's not in the region of where it was before. Will those craft breweries be able to offer tasters? Will they be able to sell their product in the form of a gift shop? And in the circumstances where there may be fairs, say the local council is organising a fair day, can those craft breweries, say for instance, take a stall at that fair, and will they be permitted to sell their product there? Thanks
very much. The limited circumstances are still being worked through, and we'll work through those with the draft person for the legislation. But the proposal would be that, yes, having had a tour of the distillery or brewery, visitors would be allowed to sample the various products, the beers, whiskies, gins, whatever, and then buy the products for consumption off the premises. And that would permit a gift shop as well, as Sinead had mentioned. We would be reluctant to go down the road of operating as bars, because given the considerable investment that bars have put into obtaining their licence and doing up their premises, it would be unfair competition if they were to be faced with a raft of new outlets in competition, and particularly at this time when the hospitality industry is suffering so badly during the COVID pandemic. So the issue about fairs and maybe the Balmoral show and issues like that, yes, the intention would be to look at that as well and see if that can be included in the circumstances. But at the same time, we wouldn't want a free-for-all where people were able to sell beers or whiskies from car boot sales or the like. So there has to be some restrictions, given that it is an alcoholic drink that they're selling.
No, I completely concur, and it wasn't for 1 minute suggestion that that it's a free for all or anything like that. I understand there has to be restrictions to allow licensed premises like bars to continue to make a living. But it's just around the licence fee then, Liam. Has there been any consideration given to what that would be?
The licence fee for a license for a new category of licence of this would more than likely be in the region of a couple of £100, which would simply cover the costs of going to court to obtain the licence.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, next.
Thank you very much. I just want to reiterate what Sinead has just said there. Including a licence for local producers is very much welcomed. I have a number of craft breweries in my area, and this would be very welcome, but the devil will be in the detail on this. I would be particularly interested to make sure that those craft brewers are allowed to sell at artisan food markets and other places, because why should their product be denied when others are able to do so? I'm just a little bit concerned about what the limitations will be on those craft brewers, and also if I've understood you correctly, they will be allowed to provide sampling on their premises and the ability for people to buy their product to take away, but not to sell their own product for drinking on the premises. Can I just check with that? So if someone pays to go on a tour, and part of that tour is the sampling, well, surely they're buying the drink then? So can we just be very clear that what is the problem with buying that drink on their premises? They're not. I wouldn't consider them to be a bar per se, because it's only their produce that they're selling. But I'm just concerned that we're looking again to limit one particular set of providers that can have such benefit for the tourism market, who may be able to offer a unique and different experience for people. Another one of my questions, I'll ask them all if you don't mind, and then because they all sort of tie together. Just clarification on the 2 a.m. opening 104 days a year with the 1 hour drinking up. That means that, effectively people could be pouring out of those premises at 3 a.m. Has there been any discussions or consideration with the nighttime economy considered, particularly with taxis and nighttime buses with maybe TransLink, to see if there's the opportunity to ensure that we're not just moving a problem on an hour, that we're actually considering how that's going to be handled. And then, and connected to that then, is I just wanted clarification about the young people in sporting club premises. It's very welcomed that those young people, it's proposed that it would be extended until 11 o'clock. But the dates of the 1st of June to the 31st of August have me a little bit confused. In the past, I would have been involved quite a lot with Camogie, and to be honest, that's the season. Their awards ceremonies may not necessarily be during the summer months. It could well be in winter months. Does this allow for one occasion in a calendar year to be outside of those dates?
Right, I'll maybe take these in reverse order, Kelly. The young people issue, the awards night can be any time within the calendar year, and we recognise that the awards nights do tend to be towards the end of the season, which could be November, December. The 104 late nights plus the hour drinking up time, you're absolutely right. That could leave people coming out of bars at 3 a.m. I mean, the public consultation and the future call for evidence by the committee will give taxi operators and TransLink the opportunity to come forward and give evidence and adjust their working hours if need be to deal with the change in time people will be leaving the town centres. I know that in the past TransLink have had great difficulty making a success of nighttime buses, but I mean that would be a matter for them to consider themselves. On the drinking on the premises for the breweries and distilleries, I mean, given how difficult a time the hospitality industry has had, particularly now, the Minister is reluctant to go down the road where you would have people going to breweries to spend the evening drinking beer. Now, I mean, you may say that they're only selling their own products, but that still is a bar, still a public house, where anybody can walk in and drink beer for the evening. And we already have a category of licence available, a public house licence. So if someone wanted to operate like that, they can obtain a public house licence, so there's no restriction on them. The difficulty they may have is the cost. So that's there for them if they want to do it. And on the food markets, yes, as I already said to Sinead's question, that we would be looking very closely at the opportunity for alcoholic drinks to be sold by local producers at craft fairs, markets, and large events such as the Balmoral Show and other country shows around the country.
Could I just ask clarification on that? Does this mean then that the local producers, if they sell tickets for people, a tour group or whatever, to attend their brewery or distillery or whatever it is, that they, unless they have a bar licence, that they can't then provide the taste of their product?
No. The proposal would be that they'd be allowed to have tasters. So they would have small samples of the various products that were on sale, and then they would buy bottles or crates, whatever it was they wanted to buy, to take home with them.
And can I just clarify then, so it wouldn't be a case of 5 pints with your tour? Will there be a limit on how much? So it's a small amount, but
it will be, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Johnny.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the answers thus far. I'm largely in agreement with what Sinead and Kelly has said. It's something that I would be very keen to see, movement on. I'm glad you've indicated that, is the ability to sell at local events and shows, and Balmoral Show, for example. I think that's essential for those businesses to showcase their product. Coming from where I live, obviously within the Orchard County, this is an issue that has been, boiling over for some time, because what we've seen in particular, there's quite an uptake and an interest now in a lot of people, both locally, especially with the staycation message, with the apple blossom tours now that are going out throughout County Armagh, but there's no ability for those local producers to showcase and highlight their product, which is it's it's senseless in my opinion, and I know in a lot of others. So it's important that we bring this particular law up to standard and indeed make it fit for purpose. And that's where I suppose probably I would like further exploration in relation to, you mentioned to Kelly that they wouldn't be able to sell their product on site in terms of like a bar type system. But even so, I don't believe it's maybe should be categorised in the way that you say, because local brewers are already, they cannot sell their product in many of the pubs because of the licence agreements with the large multinational companies, meaning that therefore that their product is not showcased and sold. So therefore they're already at a significant disadvantage to the other larger corporations. So my point would be, from a department perspective, what steps are being taken to make sure that the voices and needs of the small independent brewers and indeed cider makers are pubs are being listened to, that it's not just a case where large multinationals are being facilitated through an upgrade in terms of an amendment to this bill, whereas we do not benefit those that are going to potentially be the lifeline. I don't believe anybody that is going to these local craft breweries or distilleries are going there in the same reason that they would to a local pub or bar. It's largely going to be to facilitate that tourism aspect, and I think that we have a real opportunity here to grasp that, and we should do so. So it's something that I would like you to take on board.
Thanks very much, Johnny. I mean, the Minister's proposals, I think, will be welcomed by large parts of the sector that are dealing with, producing these local beers, ciders and spirits. Certainly, it's a great opportunity for them here that they don't currently have, to organise tours of their premises, provide samples and then sell for consumption off the premises. And the opportunity to attend fairs and markets is an opportunity for them to sell directly to the public that they don't currently have. So I think that the Minister's proposals here are a balanced set of proposals, but of course, as we go through the committee stage and through the debates in the Assembly, the proposals may be changed by amendments from members.
Has there been an ability for small independent brewers and cider makers to have their views and input to the systems thus far? Has there been any opportunities?
Yes, we've met with them on a number of occasions over the last couple of years. I visited a couple of them, and my colleague Carol has visited some of them as well. So we've engaged very closely with them. But this is part of the wider picture. We need to engage with the bars and hotels and other premises as well. So it's trying to get a balanced set of proposals that don't disadvantage any sector, but at the same time allow these producers to develop their businesses and sell to the public.
I understand the need to get a balance. I suppose probably my point is, to date, those independent breweries and cider makers have been significantly disadvantaged, and because of the way in which the bars etc. operate, there's going to continue to be that difficulty for them to highlight their product. On another vein, in relation to the views of consumers, how has the department went about gaining the views of both tourists, local and international, in relation to best practice and how this operates maybe potentially in other jurisdictions?
Well, I mean, the officials have carried out research to see what's happening in other jurisdictions. We tend to focus very much on jurisdictions close to home where the licensing systems and styles of drinking may be closer to our own. But I mean, we haven't engaged with tourists. I mean, the consultation tends to pick up local people, or be picked up by local people and responded to. I know that the Tourism Northern Ireland have been in favour of these tours in the past, and they have lobbied for them in the past. So it will add to the tourism offer, and certainly in North Armagh, where you have the cider producers where they grow their own apples and so on, there's a big opportunity there for tours and tourism.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I'm having difficulty opening my documents. That doesn't happen at home. I'm delighted to have it here today, this evidence session, and the fact that it demonstrates that the bill is going to be coming before us in the not too distant future. It has been a long time in fermentation, to catch up with Johnny on the puns, and we will as this goes through its legislative process, I'm sure get the chance to distill it down a bit further.
Oh, no.
I would agree at this stage with most aspects of what we are seeing, not all, however, I'd certainly like to be associated with the remarks of my colleagues in support of the local brewing industry. It's important that they get the opportunity to showcase the product and to grow. We're going to need to grow our economy, and it's going to have to grow local, so it's important to support this industry in every way we can. I know some in the past have looked at creative ways whereby they can showcase and sell their product. There's an annual festival in Derry, it's the Sippy of Culture, where you do have producers from all across the north and even beyond who come, and I've had to visit it once or twice just to see how it works, but it seems to be successful, and that's something we'd like to see more of. I would like to see, I think, maybe more in it around Sundays. I appreciate the work that is being done, but Sundays sort of staying the same. From memory, I'd like to see it brought into line maybe with the other days, given the fact that west of the band certainly, Sunday's a really big day, and at night I think it very much depends on the economies in these places, and in my own city, for example, where there's so many hairdressers, taxi drivers, people who work in the hospitality industry, that Monday be sort of their weekend day or their day off, so they look forward to a Sunday. So I think that should be looked at. Very much welcome issues or the efforts made to address the anomalies that have existed around and proved difficult for venues to host school formals and other events as well. I think that's very important. There was one thing in it that confused me, and I'm going from memory here, if you bear with me, Anthony, because I can't open the papers right now, and that was around the restrictions on outdoor advertising in the proximity of off licences. I'm not sure I fully get the logic of that, but I was wondering, would that apply to supermarkets as well? Could there be an ad within 200 yards of a supermarket? Or actually, in some cases, you'll see adverts in shopping centres wherein there will be a supermarket or a retail outlet that sells alcohol as well. I think it's important that when we're looking at the bill, we see what flexibilities that we can build into it as well. I'm thinking of the current situation and the difficulties facing the industry now. The industry was already struggling pre-COVID. It's going to struggle even more post-COVID, not just with the restrictions and the difficulties, the practical difficulties around social distancing and that, but also the behavioural change we're going to see. People will have got used to off-sales prices. I think it's fair to say, and not used to, or got out of the habit of going out. So I think we have to make it as easy as possible for the industry to attract people in, to sustain the industry and sustain the many jobs therein as well. When I'm talking about the flexibilities, one thing in particular would be, for example, now a lot of the wet bars, and when we're seeing the restrictions that they will have in terms of they can serve people outside if they're within an area that's licensed, given the time of year it is, and licensing courts won't be sitting during the summer. It gives them no opportunity to actually extend or amend their licence, and so I think we should look at how we can build flexibility. And like Johnny and like everyone, I'm sure we hope we're never in a situation like this again, but we should try our best to future-proof any legislation that we're putting through.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much. On the issue of Sundays being treated like every other day of the week, there's no proposal of that nature coming forward at this stage, but obviously during the progress of the bill, there'll be an opportunity for members to have their views and maybe have their say on that particular point. On advertising at off sales, that would apply to supermarkets, and the thinking here was that before the big lockdown, about 70% of alcoholic drinks were sold in off sales, mainly supermarkets, for consumption at home. and the restrictions on advertising really were about denormalising the buying of alcohol as part of the weekly shop, and sort of clarifying that alcoholic drinks are a different product, and it should not be bought in the same way as bread, milk and vegetables. So the restrictions would be that alcoholic drinks could only be advertised within the licensed part of a supermarket or within an off-sales office that's on the high street. The ban on advertising drink around the supermarket was just to avoid the case where people make impulse buys when they see that there's a particularly cheap offer available for beer, wine or spirits. And so this is part of the balanced set of proposals where, while we're encouraging the hospitality industry and we realise that there's a lot of jobs at stake there, we have to take into account the fact that abuse of alcohol and harmful drinking puts an awful strain on the health service. It cuts lives short and leads to all sorts of other difficulties. And this is part of the balanced set of proposals that the Minister's brought forward.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. And I remember, Chair might remember, she was on the committee with me maybe eight years ago, and we saw a previous carnation of this, and there was work being done around multiple purchase discounts and an attempt or a desire to do away with them. Is the review now that has that been shelved, or?
At the time, as Liam here, by the way, Mark, just Anthony's sitting beside me. But I was there at that time too, Mark. And what happened there was a proposals brought forward around irresponsible drinks promotions. And the Minister at the time took the view that while the proposals were passed into law, we didn't commence a lot of the proposals because we worked with the trade, Hospitality Ulster, the suppliers of alcoholic drinks, the Federation of Clubs, Hotels Federation, the whole lot, to come up with the current code of practice around responsible retailing of alcohol. So rather than having a situation where we were continually changing legislation to deal with new drinks promotions that were emerging, the code was endorsed by the Minister and has worked very effectively in naming and shaming licensed premises who have abused their licence by selling irresponsibly. Now, one of the proposals in the proposal the Minister is bringing forward on the proposed bill would be to give that code of practice, or a code of practice, a statutory footing, and there would be repercussions for an individual's licence if the code were to find that they were selling alcohol irresponsibly.
Okay, thank you then.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the phones. Fra, have you any questions or comments? Fra, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute there.
Oh, no problem, Fra. Good man. Go ahead.
I think, like yourself, we went through this on quite a number of occasions, and sometimes there were sensible proposals coming through, but it was the attitude of the proposals that delayed the whole thing. And I think what we have in front of us is again sensible proposals that will bring us into the 21st century. So I think all that's been said that I would have said. And I'll leave it at that until we get the opportunity to talk about it in the Assembly.
Grant, no bother, Fra, thank you. Robin, have you any comment or question?
Thank you, Chair. Just two short questions. I think when the British Medical Association were giving their evidence, they made reference to the introduction of minimum unit pricing of alcohol. Could I ask, perhaps I've missed it, is there something in the Minister's proposals, or indeed is that covered in another aspect? And can I also just refer to those situations where third-party persons, and I will say this, it's a problem in my own constituency, where youths gather outside an off-licence and someone goes in on their behalf, underage youths, and delivers the alcohol out to them. Is there anything covered in the legislation on those two issues?
Just taking the first one, Robin, minimum pricing is really a health promotion policy. And I know that the Minister for Health in the previous Assembly was very supportive of it, and there was a consultation carried out. But there's nothing in this particular set of proposals for a bill that would cover minimum unit pricing, because, as I say, it really would be a health policy to try and impact on the overall health of the community. On third parties buying alcoholic drinks from off sales for young people, that's already illegal. That would be proxy buying for a person under the age of 18. Now, it's a difficult crime for the police to investigate, but it is currently illegal, so there's no need for further proposals within this bill.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. No other members wanting to ask any questions, so can I then just say thank you, Liam, Anthony and Carol, for your briefing today. It was long awaited and very welcome. We look forward to continuing on with this and back again hopefully in September time then. So thank you.
Thank
you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And Member Five.
Okay, members, at page 31 of the packet states that the Minister welcomes comments on the proposals from the committee. At this point, we may all have our own individual views on the proposals, but the committee position will not really develop until we hear from all of the stakeholders. So can I ask members to think what we should respond at this early stage, or do we write to the Minister and say, yeah, albeit it has been very welcome, but we need to hear from stakeholders in order to form any form of position, yeah?
Just go along with that, a broad welcome. I'm looking forward to thrashing it out.
My only concern was in the paperwork, it did say that it needed to be passed before the summer recess. I can't see how that's going to happen.
Chair.
I wouldn't imagine so.
But, Chair, I think they're working on proposals over the summer on the bill, so the bill is likely to be introduced in September, October time.
Okay.
I think to get this bit done over.
Yeah. Andy, did you want to say something?
I would just concur with Mark's points that I wouldn't be comfortable expressing comments in detail at this stage. Welcome the bill in respect. Obviously, we'd hope to have it dealt with in 2016, but for obvious reasons we didn't. Welcome it, and we'll be able to share our comments in more detail when we've engaged with stakeholders.
Yeah, I think that's everybody's in agreement. Yep, okay, thank you, members. We'll move on then to agenda item number 6, which is the Arts Collaboration Network briefing on the impact of COVID-19 on the arts sector. Members, you've been provided at page 127 with some papers, and can I welcome to the meeting Margaret Henry, Sean Cairns and Anne McReynolds. You're all very welcome. Margaret, can I ask you if you could begin your briefing for us, please?
Yes, I can. I can indeed, Chair. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can indeed. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. I'm one of the conveners of the Arts Collaboration Network. I'd like to thank you for your time today and for responding so quickly to our request to brief the committee. We are all very conscious of the huge amount of vital work undertaken by the Department and this committee since the COVID-19 crisis began, especially in supporting the most vulnerable communities across Northern Ireland throughout lockdown and beyond. And we appreciate you giving time to our sector, a sector that I'm sure you will agree is essential to the economic and social recovery of Northern Ireland. As stated in the information we've provided, the Arts Collaboration Network has been meeting for over 3 years and is a cross-section of arts and culture organisations who want to work collaboratively for the good of the sector. But as COVID-19 began to take hold and its impacts began to be revealed, we realised we needed to meet more often and to start conversations across all parts of this diverse sector. So we've been talking to our creative workforce, the freelancers, musicians, artists and facilitators who are the lifeblood of the sector. We've been talking to our organisations and venues who produce and present the cultural work and the activity people attend and take part in. And we've been talking to our audiences, visitors, participants, people from all parts of Northern Ireland who experience many benefits from their everyday cultural activity. Never before has there been such collaboration across these three parts of the sector, and that in many ways is a sign of the scale of what we are facing. Today we want to build on the recovery paper you have already received by bringing to life some of the impacts and challenges each part of the sector is trying to deal with. To begin this morning, I'm going to hand you over to Sean Kearns. Sean is one of Northern Ireland's most experienced and acclaimed actors, working locally, nationally and internationally across stage and screen. Sean, over to you.
Hello. Good morning and thank you for your time. I suppose I'd like to begin by saying that I am one voice amongst thousands of freelancers working in Northern Ireland. I am an actor who is from Northern Ireland, who came up through the ranks of the Ulster Youth Theatre, who has subsequently then worked nationally. I've been lucky enough to work 2 seasons with the RSC, with the Royal Shakespeare Company, 2 seasons of Shakespeare's Globe. For the last 10, 15 years, I have been predominantly working in the West End of London in musicals such as Wicked, Billy Elliot, The Commitments. And I'd also like to say that what I do for a living is not a hobby. It is my profession, like most and all of the freelancers in Northern Ireland. I am a sole trader, and I have been working professionally for the past 35 years, and this is my only income. So at the beginning of this year, I was on tour in North America, working on a musical called The Last Ship, which was written by Sting. And COVID-19 forced our production to shut down. We lost 12 weeks of the tour. I was then due to come back to Belfast to start rehearsing Good Vibrations at the Lyric Theatre. And that contract was running from the 27th of April to mid-November. And due to COVID, that production has been cancelled. That production also was meant to reopen the newly refurbished Irish Arts Centre in New York in November, which would have been an incredible opportunity to showcase Northern Irish talent on a world stage. The Last Ship, which I was doing at the beginning of the year, was then due to go to Australia at the end of the year in December. And as a result of that, I have lost £40,000 in income. That has been, totally negated and taken away, so I have no income for the rest of the year. And that was not a projected income, that was contractually obligated, and because of COVID and an act of God, there is no recompense. I, as a freelancer, then applied for universal credit, and because my wife works part-time, I'm not entitled to universal credit. So, as a person who has worked for 35 years to suddenly have no work, it's a devastating thing. And not only for me, because I cannot do my job without a set designer, without a costume designer, without a lighting designer, without stage management team, without front of house staff in a theatre. So this affects thousands and thousands of people. And it's the uncertainty of what is going to happen. Now, we realise that it can't be as it was before the outbreak happened, and we are very aware of that. But we have to be allowed and encouraged and be led to believe that we can return back to work in a safe environment. And, it's the mental health quality for people. This is a treacherous business as it is, with periods of uncertainty. But what we are facing at the moment, it's devastating because the barriers keep being pushed further and further away. And when you think, we've come up with a solution, or we think this can happen, then with social distancing and with regulations, then those things are just pushed further away. So I would like to pass you over to Anne McReynolds, who would like to talk to you on behalf of the venues in Northern Ireland. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the opportunity, committee. As Sean says, I'm Anne McReynolds. I'm Chief Executive of the MAC in Belfast, and I'd like to just give you a bit of an insight into the challenges facing venues and arts organisations throughout Northern Ireland. The news that I know you won't find surprising is that there is no part of the arts and entertainment sector in Northern Ireland which is unaffected, and every part of our sector is facing obliteration. That's ironic given that 2019-20 was, in the MAC's instance, our most successful trading year since opening in terms of ticket sales, fundraising, venue hire and cafe bar sales. But in March, in common with every arts venue in Northern Ireland and every independent or local authority venue, the MAC immediately ceased all operations. And that meant that our self-generating activities fell off a cliff. We went from last year generating over £400,000 from ticket sales to nothing. Nothing in through cafe bar, nothing from venue hire, no income from corporate catering or fundraising or donations. And that means that every month that the MAC stays closed, we lose over £100,000 in self-generated income. And that's going to total well over 1.3 million in 2020-2021 alone. The point I want to make, though, is that that is just the MAC. Consider the scale of this replicated across Northern Ireland to include my colleagues and friends in the Millennium Forum and the Playhouse in Derry, Londonderry, the Marketplace in Armagh, the Bernavon in Cookstown, the Alliance Traban, and not to mention Lyric, the Opera House, the Crescent Arts Centre, the Black Box, and the OES Centre in Belfast. Along with every theatre in Northern Ireland, there will be no Christmas show in the MAC in 2020. And this is going to have a massive impact in three main areas. Firstly, and most importantly, hundreds of thousands of school children have perhaps their only arts experience every Christmas, and that's just not going to happen for them this year. Thousands of creative workers, set designers, set builders, set painters, web designers, illustrators, lighting and sound designers, stage managers, technicians, writers, directors, producers, composers, creative learning and participation workers, actors, dancers and musicians will not be employed this Christmas. And finally and thirdly, Christmas shows and pantomimes are the box office busting mainstay of every theatre in the world. Even if the COVID impact was limited to the cancellations of pantomimes alone for Northern Irish venues, we would be crippled. And yet this crisis is affecting every exhibition, every live performance, every gig, and every workshop and class series in every venue across Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is facing cultural Armageddon, and we need our executive to respond quickly and proportionately to prevent Northern Ireland from becoming a creative and cultural wasteland. And that's only the venues. Every part of the arts sector is dependent on every other part of the arts sector. Venues can't survive without the artists and arts organisations who create and present the work in our galleries, theatres and workshop spaces. And in turn, artists and arts organisations can't survive without the galleries, theatres and shared spaces in which we, the public, enjoy their work and participate in their practice. The arts sector in Northern Ireland and the thousands of workers who make it a shining success are facing devastation, and we need your help. I'm nearly finished, but I just wanted to say that we really are facing a big problem, and big complex problems require big complex solutions. And as Mags has said before, you will not find a more creative, entrepreneurial and ideologically committed bunch of people than you'll find in Northern Ireland's arts sector. We don't have all the answers, and no one group does, but we are ready and willing to work with you and our colleagues in the Department for Communities, the Department of Finance, the Department for Education, the Department for the Economy and the Arts Council to find solutions to this crisis. Finally, I just want to make it clear to you why arts venues can't open anytime soon and why the sector's survival depends on a significant and urgent financial package from government. Apart from DFC's guidelines, which state that venues should only open when it's safe and viable for us to do so, there are two main reasons why we can't trade our way back to solvency. The first is social distancing. Public health advice is clear. Singing is a high-risk activity. Dancing is a high-risk activity. Standing close to other people is a high-risk activity. Being in a confined space for a prolonged period of time is a high-risk activity. And yet, arts venues and our artists and arts organisations rely on large numbers of people congregating mostly in enclosed spaces to enjoy and participate in collective activity. This means that venues like the Millennium Forum in Derry, Londonderry, can only accommodate 240 people in their 1,012-seat venue, and that's even at 1 metre distancing. And although the OEM Music Centre may be able to open, they won't be able to host music gigs. And that's like opening Tesco but not allowing them to sell food. Secondly and finally, customer confidence. And this is when I'm going to hand over to Margaret. Audiences are telling us they're not ready to come back anytime soon and won't do so until they feel safe, which means that even if we open before our customers are ready, the sector will face even greater economic disaster. So thanks so much for listening and for this opportunity. I'm going to hand over to Margaret.
Thank you, Anne. The final part of the sector is as essential as our artists and our organisations are, of course, our audiences. And we've been talking to audiences across Northern Ireland about how arts and culture fits into their lives, how that's altered during lockdown, and what they need from the sector as recovery begins. I think it's important to recognise the sheer volume of arts and culture activity taking place all the time across all parts of Northern Ireland. For example, over a 3-year period until March 2019, over 300 households in Northern Ireland had purchased a ticket for cultural activity. In the Derry City and Strabane District Council area alone, we have research that shows 95% of people living in that area attended or visited a cultural place over a 12-month period, from the Playhouse to the Void, the Nerd Centre or the Derry Jazz and Blues Festival. In the same council area, 92% of people had taken part in a cultural activity. They may not have called it arts and culture necessarily, but over 142,000 people were doing a range of things, from taking part in book clubs, singing in community choirs, going to a drawing class or learning circus skills, with organisations as diverse as Echo Echo Dance Company to In Your Space Circus. The committee will know that the evidence is clear that arts, culture and creativity and the benefits they bring are important and regular parts of people's lives. But obviously at the start of March, our world changed. During lockdown, the demand for arts, culture and creativity has, if anything, increased. As people coped with staying at home, this sector provided a way to entertain children and support homeschooling, show our support for the NHS through drawing rainbows, opportunities to get some relief from the very sad news we were hearing daily, and to help support the mental health issues many of us were facing. The sector also provided practical help. Arts Extra, who many of you will know, have continued to work throughout lockdown with refugees, migrants and older people who were shielding. They've adapted their work to provide food parcels, home crafting kits and homeschooling support, and this is to some of those at the very margins of our society. This work has been across North, South and West Belfast and in rural parts of Northern Ireland, working with the Rural Housing Association. On a national scale, the BBC are reporting massive audience engagement with their culture and quarantine content. Over 26,500 people submitting drawings during their live drawing series in BBC4. But closer to home, Tinderbox Theatre Company's Solo Art Initiative featured on the UK-wide BBC website. And tonight, the Lyric Theatre, in partnership with BBC Northern Ireland and with support from the Arts Council, are launching its Splendid Isolation series of short plays, featuring some of our most talented and creative individuals, including the BAFTA-nominated Lisa McGee, creator of Dairy Girls. And if any of the committee want to watch that, it's at 10 o'clock on BBC Two this evening and then on iPlayer. Every film, every song, every book, every online class that we consume during lockdown has a host of creative individual and organisations behind it to make it happen, and it's those same individuals who now need your support. We've also been asking local people about what they are missing about live events, when they might consider returning, and as Anne has said, what measures they need to see in place before coming back, and the message is clear. 93% of Northern Ireland audiences who previously attended live theatre, music and other events are missing the opportunity to do so. But 88% of audiences are not booking events at this time, and the small number that are looking at booking in the latter part of 2020 or even into 2021. People may be missing their live events, their local venues, their festivals, but only a small percentage of those asked felt confident about coming back as soon as, of course, we are given a date to reopen. Safety is still paramount in people's minds. Avoiding queues, limiting numbers and increased cleaning are all important measures that people need to see in place. As we know, the amount and type of digital arts content consumed increased during lockdown, and our local audiences have been accessing this work. People have enjoyed experiencing the new theatre created by Big Telly using Zoom and their company of talented actors and technicians. Our local international stars like Gary Lightbody entertained us all and helped us to write new songs. The Dunkirk Arts Centre and Oh Yeah brought the best of musical talent to our homes. So yes, local, national and international arts and culture were part of that online consumption. But beyond lockdown, we wanted to see if people will still engage in arts and culture online, especially if social distancing is limiting the availability and the viability of physical events and festivals. While some people say yes, they will still engage in digital arts and culture, 48% were unsure and 26% said they will not go online. By far and away, the biggest reason for not consuming arts and culture online is that the online experience is not seen as an attractive alternative to the live event. And that makes sense. Whether it's attending Culture Night in the Marketplace in Armagh, the Fleadh Cheoil, or any one of the local community arts festivals across NI, online is not going to give the same sense of meeting friends and neighbours that these live events create. Digital content has a part to play in the future of this sector, but cannot replace either the experience or indeed the income of live events and participatory work that are cornerstones of the sector. Anne has already told you about the huge losses in earned income the sector has sustained, and digital cannot replace that. When we asked people if they would pay for content online, even a live streaming of an event at, say, the Ardoin or the Home Place, over 60% of people said they would expect to pay less than if they were attending physically, and many felt that digital should actually be free. Does this mean that the actors, writers, musicians and technicians, plus others who've created that event should have their wages reduced? Well, that just seems unfair and unsustainable. As we've tried to show today, all parts of the sector, creative workers, organisations and audiences are missing what we usually do, but they are also working together to adapt to the new normal, but we need your help. To finish, this is not simply a Northern Ireland issue, as you know. This is a global pandemic with far-reaching and long-term impacts, some known and indeed some yet unknown. We've seen other governments respond, for example, the government in the Republic of Ireland intervening last week with an initial €25 million package, and we know they're looking at additional support. And we very much hope that the UK government will bring forward a support package through DCMS in the next couple of weeks. We now need our executive and our assembly to do the same here. We're asking the committee to write to the Minister expressing support for our needs, asking her to secure the investment that we feel is needed, and also to work with the sector in a co-design process to ensure we can survive, adapt and renew to make our essential contribution to the economic and social recovery of Northern Ireland. That concludes our formal presentation, and we appreciate your time, and we're very happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Margaret, Sean and Anne. You've probably answered nearly every question a member would have there in that briefing. It was very detailed. Can I just say a big thank you? I absolutely understand what the arts brings to us as a people, how it can affect and change people's lives, whether that is at community level, right through to highbrow, whether it's music, whether it's drama, whatever that might be. The joy that it brings, and also when you look at mental health and things like that, it can make such a difference in so many people's lives. So I absolutely get that, and I think as a committee we need to remember that this is just not a sector. These are real people with real lives, with who have done so much for us, for our tourism, for very many reasons here in Northern Ireland, and we can't forget about that. So I suppose it was just, there's really not much more I can ask on questions, because you've pretty much have answered everything. I was wanting to know about, have you done your research about how confident would people be about coming back into theatre? And I think it was Sean said that the word was uncertainty, and I think when it comes to theatre especially, there's major uncertainty ahead as to when that we'll ever see that come back to normal. I suppose, have we, and I know here in Northern Ireland we don't get the weather for it very often, but have we looked at even anything for outside? I know in my own local council area we would have had theatre at the Mill. We would have done outside performances, and these were fantastic. And I certainly know many people wouldn't mind paying for that, though I do get what you're saying about the actors on stage and the closeness, and in order for it to portray something properly, you maybe need them to interact with one another. And I also welcome the splendid isolation this evening. I will most certainly be watching it, if not tonight on iPlayer. I heard it on Gamoo this morning, them talking about it. And I suppose that just shows us as well the industry that you come from a creative industry, and it shows your creativity in around how you still want to bring that joy to people. So it's just but more comments from me than anything else. And I suppose the only question is then really, if money is not forthcoming to the levels that are required, so what sort of level are we looking at of people who will find themselves unemployed going into the future? I suppose that's the only real question, but just wanted to make those few points also.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and obviously we would endorse your comments. Two things I would say. Number one, in terms of outdoor work, absolutely that's being looked at, and indeed has already been carried out. We've had some theatre companies, Kibosh and Eastside Arts Festival, performing in the car parks of our care homes to try and lift the spirits of staff and residents who we know have gone through a very difficult time during the pandemic. So outdoor work has always been a part of what we've done, and we continue to explore those options. But again, not all work, as you rightly say, is suitable for an outdoor environment, and the vagaries of our lovely climate also make that challenging. To come on to your second point about if we do not receive the investments that we require, we are looking at a very serious situation. We are looking at thousands of jobs going and people being made redundant, and we are looking at an entire generation of creatives who will have to seek work in different sectors and maybe even in different parts of the country. We are also looking at venues closing. We are coming to a real cliff edge here. Furlough is coming to an end, as you know, for all of us. So those venues and organisations who were able to defer some costs through furloughing, that's about to stop, while we still cannot return to our original levels of capacity. So we are looking at our major venues, the Lyric, the Mac and others, facing closure, and that is what we're going to have to face next if we don't receive this investment.
Okay, thank you for that, Margaret. And I suppose again, I would just want to applaud you for your honesty and being very blunt with the committee and putting that forward. I was at the opening of the MAC all those years ago when I first became an MLA, and it was a wonderful event, and I've been to several, performances in it as well, and it would be such a shame, along with all of our other theatres, I have to say, they're all wonderful, that if we were to lose any of that. I mean, even the investment as well that has been put in to so many of our theatres as well, it would be a major, major loss, never mind the human cost as well on that. I'm just going to open up here for a few comments from members. I have Sinead, then Kelly, then Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and I concur with your remarks, your opening remarks there, and thanks to Margaret, Sean and Anne for coming today. I think we have to understand that, the arts budget across the North has been subject to year-on-year reduction in terms of funding, so to add COVID into the mix and the problems it has brought, which has been, clearly articulated here today, you're talking about a serious crisis facing the art sector, and, I don't doubt for 1 second that the information that the guys have given us today is factual. It's not exaggerated. It's not a scare tactic. I've no doubt at all that it is factual. And I think it was Sean had touched on it, and you probably couldn't hear me the last day of the Arts Council, and my line was bad, but it goes back to the point that I made that day too, and I think we have to fundamentally change the way we look at the arts, that it's not a hobby, that it's not a pastime, that these are people's jobs, livelihoods, that it's an economy, and it's a thriving economy. And if you look at the workforce, approximately 43,000 people employed, a contribution to the economy of approximately 8 million. And I know in the recent survey published by the Department for Communities, approximately about 84% of people in the North, households in the North, are actually engaged with the arts. So it's a huge contributor to our society, not just financially, but societally and all the well-being benefits that it brings. I think what we haven't factored in here as well, to compound the problems, is going to be Brexit. Because we need to ensure that the ability of artists and touring companies to tour this island is not going to be impacted, and that's where we need, I think, the administrations north and south to really be alive to this and be awake to this, and make sure that the ability of those touring companies is not impacted, and artists are protected. We do have to mention the Minister's intervention, which was wholly welcome in terms of the support for the arts. Now, it's never going to be enough, considering the huge financial crisis that the arts sector is facing. But it is welcome, and it did help. I think if there is to be an economic stimulus package coming from Westminster, then there is absolutely no question that the arts sector need to be factored in there. Whether that's concessions to go and see shows, but some sort of stimulus. If there is to be something coming in terms of an economic stimulus, the arts definitely has to be factored in there. And I would actually, and it goes back to my point about us, how we view the arts, and how we need to view it as a strand of our economy. And I would support the Arts Collaboration Network, speaking directly to the Minister for Economy as well, because it is very important that this committee liaises with our Minister, but I think the Minister for the Economy and the Minister for Finance as well will have a role to play here, and I think those departments would really benefit from hearing the presentation that we heard here today.
Thank you, Sinead. Could I just respond to a couple of the points you've made? Yes, I didn't even want to mention Brexit, but you're right. Before this huge health epidemic happened, we had been facing successive years of cuts. So we were a fragile sector, and in many ways punching way above our weight in terms of the investment that we've been receiving. And Brexit was bringing a whole series of additional challenges to us being able to deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. So I really appreciate you raising that point as well. Also raising the point that we do work across so many different areas of government. I think out of the PFG, we probably contribute to about 9 of the 14 outcomes. And your point about the fact that the arts are a professional, highly skilled workforce is also very much to the forefront of these discussions. It's very easy sometimes to talk about the big glossy productions like Game of Thrones and the fantastic success that has been for Northern Ireland. But that production came here because we had a foundation and a bedrock of technicians, set designers, makeup artists, costume makers, actors, all of whom have come up through the arts sector that we are talking about trying to protect and help survive today. And it is only by having that bedrock and foundation of creative individuals that hopefully in the future we will continue to bring those type of high-profile projects to Northern Ireland. As we've tried to say, the interdependencies are really important. We need it all at every level to reap the full benefits economically and socially for the people of Northern Ireland.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kelly?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Margaret, Sean and Anne. I'm quite emotional sitting here listening to what you've described as the terminal velocity of the arts sector in Northern Ireland, and my heart goes out to everyone who has been worrying themselves sick. I'm sure there have been many sleepless nights for so many of you faced with this terrible challenge. I've read through the document that you provided for us, and under number 5, part number 5, you talk about the needs of the sector and what we could be doing with going forward. You've mentioned in that a cultural sector recovery plan. Having worked in the community and voluntary sector for a number of years, I'm very aware that you can say this to people, but unless you actually come to the table with a proposal in mind, sometimes it makes it quite difficult in government world for them to understand what you're thinking about. Have you and all of the people that you work with, have you come up with an idea? I know you've mentioned there about immediate hardship fund and the support for the self-employed going through the job retention scheme for that to be extended, and the stabilisation fund, but is there actually another aspect to this recovery plan that you guys are looking at the moment? I for one do not believe that even if a finger was, we'd clicked our fingers tomorrow and COVID was over, that the economic impact on families across Northern Ireland means that they may not be able to afford to go back to enjoy performances and go back to paying for the arts in the future. I'm just wondering, your cultural sector recovery plan, have you mapped that out in any way to consider a slow growth recovery, and where have you got to so far with that?
Thank you for that, Kelly. And I mean, you're right, we're very conscious of individuals and the fact that almost everyone's financial status has been affected by this. So we are very conscious of that. Unlike maybe other sectors who are maybe going to put their prices up a little bit to try and recover, that's not something the arts and culture sector will do, because we want to encourage access and not make price a barrier. So that avenue is not open to us. In terms of the cultural recovery plan, and indeed a task force to help lead that, we're still discussing what we think that should be. We would like to work with the Arts Council, with all of the voices in the sector, and with all of the departments to make that work. We've looked at some of the examples that the Northern Ireland Executive have already put in place. There is a tourism recovery force, as you know, and also an economic recovery plan now as well. And we would want to be linking in with all of those. We'd want to be able to work as an independent group who could really get down to what the details are. And as dates emerge from the executive in relation to what is safe and what can be done, we would then like to stage very clearly how that recovery could possibly work, knowing that there's a certain amount of crystal ball looking that is required. So I suppose what we're saying is we want to involve our partners right across the economy and social life of Northern Ireland. We want to make sure we represent the voices in the sector, and we want to do that in a way that is independent and that is constructive and moves the sector forward to a better place.
Thank you very much. Just finally, just to say that you started the papers that we had received by saying culture is everything, and I absolutely agree. It permeates across all of life here in Northern Ireland. COVID, unfortunately, may have put a freeze on life, but it didn't put a freeze on costs. So I do actually support us connecting with the Minister to ask about that cultural sector recovery plan, because it is a sector that we cannot afford to lose. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mark?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Margaret, Sean and Anne for what was a very good and detailed presentation, but also a very sobering and stark presentation. think it's fair to say, not just today, but when we've previously discussed the arts, either in this forum or indeed on the Assembly floor, that there's clear support and sympathy for the sector across parties. But we need that, and the sector needs that, to manifest itself in tangible assistance and meaningful investment. We need urgent action, but we also need sustained support. Like, as politicians, I think it's fair to say we're often accused of knowing the cost of everything and the value of nothing. But it seems to be, to me, that as MLAs, we do appreciate the value of the arts, and now we need to know the cost of saving the sector, and we need to meet that cost as well, because what will be the cost of not doing that? We've heard about the impact on individuals, the impact on their livelihoods and lives, on families, on venues, on society. And I think on that wider society bit was borne out by the statistics we heard there from my own council area, and people's interaction with and involvement in the arts. I'm often critical of presentations here for being Belfast-centric, but I think the North West got a good run out today as well. There was reference there to what is happening in the 26 counties with 25 million euro, I think, committed thus far, and it's my understanding that there's another request for £30 million or €30 million, I think it is, under consideration. But have you any detail on what is happening elsewhere across these islands and even beyond in terms of the arts sector? And in terms of the suggestion, I suppose, that we write to the Minister, I would certainly propose that, but I would take on what Sinead had said, and I think we need to widen it out. I don't want to write to the Minister to give her a kick and say, oh, you need to fund the arts. We should be writing to the Minister and letting her know that we'll support any bid that she is making for a package to support, indeed save the sector. We should be writing that to the executive. Also, I think Sinead mentioned a couple of other departments that might be an interest, but I don't think that anyone had mentioned health. We do know of huge health and mental health benefits in particular that art brings to practitioners and patrons alike. So I think it's imperative that we pull out all the stops here.
Okay.
If I can just respond, Mark, thank you for the question. I'm from Strabane myself, so I made sure that the Northwest would get a place in the sun. So I know, no, you don't need to apologise, thank you. To come back on your question about what's happening in other areas, as you know, we've tried to estimate the scale of the need. Now, it's very difficult to estimate figures. I think even the Chancellor in the UK government struggles to give figures, and we have estimated an initial investment of £24 million into the sector here. But it is interesting to compare that figure with what some of the other countries in Europe and beyond have been giving to support their sector. In Italy, we've seen a £220 million fund established to sustain companies and workers in the world of the arts during lockdown. The German government has pledged €1 billion, which is around half its usual annual cultural budget, to fund supporting theatres, museums and other organisations to open their doors again as soon as possible after the enforced break. In France, we've seen a scheme launched by the President there, which he has now extended until August 2021, which is a special unemployment payment for actors, musicians, performers and technicians, and also a special support fund of £7 billion. So those are big figures, and we know and we fully appreciate that the Northern Ireland Executive has had many calls on its funds. We've seen recently the figures that some of our colleagues in the business sector have been able to access to sustain the support that they've needed during the lockdown. I know, for example, that the £10,000 grants that were available to businesses to sustain themselves had a very good take-up, and already 231.5 million has been given out to businesses in Northern Ireland through that scheme. An additional, I think it is 70 million have been given out in terms of the grant for 25,000, and I know as well the Minister for Economy had announced a recent hardship fund for businesses. So we're not saying that we're a more important sector, we're saying that we deserve the same support to be sustained and to help us survive this unprecedented situation. And we're working with the Arts Council, and I know the department is, to drill down into what that need is exactly, but we certainly feel that our estimation of 24 million is the least of what we need as an initial investment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the phones. I'll go to Robin first. Robin, have you any comment or any question you want to ask? Robin? Hi, Robin, can you hear me?
Sorry, Chair. I don't have any comments specifically. I think we all, and it has already been said in your opening remarks, Chair, about the value of the arts. I do think I would support Mark's proposal that we write to the various ministers, because I think this is a holistic problem. I don't believe it will be solved in Northern Ireland. I think this is going to be a UK-wide initiative of investment in the arts and valuing the arts for the longer term as part of the recovery from COVID-19. I think that's all I've got to say at this stage, Chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Robin. Fra, have you any comment?
Sure, just one, and thank you for the presentation. It was fairly extensive, but I would support my colleagues and what they have said. I think they have asked all the questions, made all the comments, and I think that when you lay it out the way you have, and the amount of people, different categories of people who will be affected or who are affected by it, I think what we can do is to look at how we champion that cause, to bring it to the attention of a wider audience, per se, of people to try and ensure that you get the resources necessary to achieve stay alive.
Okay, thanks, Fra. Margaret, Sean and Anne, can I say a very big thank you to you? I think as a result of this, then I think it's an idea actually we write to the executive. I even know this falls under the criminal justice system. I remember going to see an excellent play some years ago with a group of young people from an interface, and it was very much to show them that prison life wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
It's a captive audience.
Yeah, it was a very good play. I think it was Macbeth that the play was. This goes across all departments, and has been used, as I say, to show our young people the downside of criminality as well. So it touches so many lives. So I think certainly, just to inform you, Margaret, Sean and Anne, that as a result of the briefing today, we will write to the executive. We will send on your paper to the executive, and we'll point out just how many lives that this does touch. And also, I will raise the issue tomorrow. I have a meeting with the minister in the morning. So with our own minister in the morning, I'll raise the issue with her specifically. So it was just to inform you of that. Mark, did you want to add something onto that?
It's just important. Well, I proposed writing to the executive as a whole. I think it's important we give the minister her place as well.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Johnny, you want to come in?
Yeah, no, because I was just to say in support of that, could I also suggest potentially that we write also, or get the minister to the Chancellor in relation to the support packages that were provided? Yeah. Because I think that would be important as well, because there's obviously many within the sector that have fallen through the cracks of not being able to access support schemes. So I think that would be important also, and alongside that to the executive, that we write to the Chancellor. Okay, members all agreed then with that. Okay, can I say thank you to Margaret and to Sean and to Anne for your honesty today. And we hope to be talking to you again then going forward. We just want you to know that you have the committee's support. Certainly it's overwhelming support within this committee for all that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, members, we're now going to move back to the chairperson's business. I've discussed earlier, so if you can go to page 3 of your tabled papers. Hold on, I just pull mine up in front of me. Yep, we have a reply to a question that was asked of the department that specifically Mark had raised during an assembly debate and also in the committee last week. And we have Paul Price, who has joined us. Paul, are you there?
Can you hear me?
You're very welcome. Paul, if you could go ahead and brief the members on the content of the response before we take any comments or questions.
Of course, yes. The letter does 2 things, and I'll take them in turn.
Okay.
The first part of the letter is about the consultation response report. And essentially what this letter does is apologise for not providing this report to the committee until the 4th of June. The Minister instructed officials, or she approved the publication of this report, and this was communicated to officials on the 6th of April. This was communicated to officials in and amongst a range of actions involved in the process of starting the legislative process for the Housing Amendment Act, engagement with the Assembly, engagement with the Executive, engagement with the Speaker and so on, and engagement with the committee. The short and long of this is that we took forward all of these actions but for the issuing of the consultation report to the committee. We realised this on the 1st of June, belatedly, and quickly issued and published the report. This, of course, meant that when the Minister and I briefed the committee on the 13th of May, prior to the introduction of the legislation into the Assembly, the committee should have had the report, but we did not appreciate that they did not. This is not to exonerate. I was responsible for this. I should have been aware. So to make clear that the error was inadvertent, as I hope the committee would expect. So it is an error on the part of officials. I am sorry. In the context of an accelerated passage procedure, it was important to brief the committee as fully as possible. So I'm very sorry about that. Do you want me to move on to the next part of the letter, or should I?
Yeah, just go ahead, Paul. That's fine.
Okay, so the second part of the letter. It answers the question asked of the department by the committee about ONS engagement in the development of the provisions in the legislation. And that's in the first paragraph of that section of the letter. I won't refer to that. The letter then goes on to address what seemed to be the core issue, which is the reason why this bill should not contain provisions that would abolish the failed scheme of the housing executive. And as this letter states, these reasons cannot be because ONS will have any view on this matter, because ONS will not. ONS will be solely focused on how the bill affects the department's relationship with the housing associations, and not remotely on how it affects the department's relationship with the housing executive. The letter then explains what the reason is, and I can expand a little on what the letter in fact says. And I'm going to read this. I've prepared a bit of text here. It's very short, but I'm going to read it because it's important to be really precise on this point. We believe that including in this particular bill of provisions that would abolish the housing executive sales scheme would cause a legislative competence problem because of the following. Taking away a right that housing executive tenants currently enjoy, that are purchasing their homes potentially engages Article 1, Protocol 1 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to property, as well as engaging potentially Article 8, the right to respect for home. The primary engagement is first, really, Article 1, Protocol 1. That's the first point. Now, in a process that has been driven by and defined by the pressing need for the reclassification of housing associations, the abolition of the housing executive sales scheme would interfere with the rights under the European Convention of Human Rights without any clear reason. And the provision of an Assembly bill which is incompatible with ECHR rights is not law. And I'm referring here to Section 6 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, in which event the purported removal of the right to buy may be considered by a court not to have been effective. In the course of developing the legislation now, in the provisions now in the bill, the only purported basis for the abolition of the housing executive sales scheme towards the objective of reclassification was to prevent a challenge arising from the difference in the right to buy, i.e. between those who rent from the housing executive and who would be able to buy, and those who rent from a housing association and would not. But the fact is, no such challenge could be successful because the reason for taking away the right to buy from RHA tenants does not exist for housing executive tenants. It is pretty clear and pretty obvious. You need to remove the housing association sales scheme to achieve reclassification. The same may not be said for the removal of the housing executive sales scheme. So what this means is that a judge in a judicial review or a law officer or the Supreme Court is likely to consider that the abolition of the housing executive sales scheme through this bill would unjustifiably interfere with the right to housing executive tenants. That is not to say, as the Minister has indicated, that there may not be good grounds to consider abolition of the right to buy of housing executive tenants, but that would need its own policy justification and cannot exist in this bill, which addresses a specific problem, the reclassification of RHA. Just a little bit left here. Every bill, once it has passed its final stage, and before it proceeds to royal assent, first passes to our Attorney General for him to consider whether it is within the competence of the Northern Ireland Assembly, as defined under Section 6 of the 1998 Act. Should the Attorney General consider that the competence of the Assembly in respect of the matter in the bill is in question, then before it may proceed to royal assent, he may refer such a bill to the UK Supreme Court for a determination. The least risk that this poses to a bill is a significant delay. The letter covers the same territory in less detail. I'm prepared also to offer a short summary of the consultation report that they've belatedly received, but for now I think that's the letter covered, Chair. I'll pause the question, shall I?
Yep, that's okay. Paul, thank you. I've only one question, and it's more of a technical question than anything else. And I suppose this, again, shows us why accelerated passage is not ideal and why it's something that we shouldn't be doing regularly. and I mean, I know people can make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Certainly, I've made many of them, so I have in my time, and forgotten to do things or hadn't done them in a timely manner. And yeah, I can hold my hands up to that, and that's fair enough. That's okay. But the question I sort of want to ask is, it's nothing to do with the 6th of April date, which is the date that that it was communicated the officials to publish the report. It's actually the date of the 13th of May then, whenever we received our briefing on the 13th of May. I mean, was it not flagged up to yourselves even then that no questions were even asked about the consultation at that witness session? I mean, that should have automatically flagged up to yourself, okay, they didn't ask any questions on the consultation. Maybe that's because they didn't have the consultation. It's more, the 6th of April date, that to me that's not an issue, that's not a problem, because mistakes are made. But certainly the 13th of May, whenever we were briefed on this, surely to goodness that would have raised, are you telling me that it didn't at that time raise a concern or an issue after your, sort of in your debrief after the witness session?
It's a fair question, Chair. I think the honest answer is I didn't, and we didn't appreciate, if you like, negatively the business that did not come up at the committee. We were always in this, and I think this is the heart of the issue, focused on achieving the requirements of a demanding timescale. For good or ill, we did not appreciate this until the 1st of June.
Okay. I find it quite strange. I mean, it is when that we were getting a briefing and no one even highlighted this issue to you. It would have flagged straight away. Okay, my goodness, I forgot to send that out. So I find that all just a bit strange. I'm going to open up the meeting. I'm going to go to Mark first, as he was the initial one that had raised the concerns.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul. I certainly, Chair, would accept Paul's explanation, and I accept fully his apology. Yeah. These things do happen, like you say, and I think we have to be mindful of the current context and particular. But I think it's important that we hear what steps then that the department are taking to put safeguards in place against something like this happening again on another bill or anything else that's coming up to us. In terms of the points that you were making, Chair, around the committee briefing, I could read back over it a couple of times, and it was almost conspicuous by its absence, all right, in terms of mentions by members, but also mentions from officials and minister as well. It was like it just didn't exist. It was good. I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you entirely clearly there, Paul. Again, that's not your fault, but I mean, I'd had contact with ONS last week as well, and they was very careful what they say. They're quite non-committal, but I did get a degree of comfort or clarity that the amendments that had been proposed wouldn't have affected ONS per se. And I know you're saying that they'd gone away from the initial intent of the bill, which would lead me to the question as to why the bill was designed so narrowly when it could have been designed to meet the ONS requirements as well as address the wider right to buy policy change that the situation and consultation that I believe did give policy justification for. Finally then, I suppose I'd ask in terms of the wider Northern Ireland executive or housing executive piece that we have been promised now. Are you in any position at this stage to give any sort of rough timetable even or next steps about that piece of work, that vitally important piece of work, and what discussions are there ongoing or have there been with the housing executive themselves about the implications of delay to that, and indeed the delay to the changes to right to buy that I had proposed there. But I don't want to make too big a thing about it. The horse has bolted, and I do accept Paul's explanation.
I'll take each point in turn. I mean, the point about how departmental procedures will stop this happening again. I think we have a way of working in normal times that would preclude this happening. This happened in a period of adjustment. This is not an excuse. It shouldn't have happened. But I think we need to take away the point to make sure that in the readjustment that we have now largely made, we make sure that we can recreate how it normally organises work when we're all in the office. But I will put that away, and I will step on that personally as well. The second point is it's a very good question. There's two reasons really why the bill couldn't be wider. The first is the bill was mandated by the executive in precise terms in September 16, and then the executive dissolved in January 17. And so the bulk of the work that underpins this bill has been taken forward by officials with no ability at all to change the original mandate. A belated change of a dimension like this, widening an ONS bill so that it's considering the future of house sales and social supply, takes you back to the start. That takes me to the second reason. The terms of derogation that the UK government have given us, i.e. the derogation that defers the very negative impact that reclassification has, have always been based on the Northern Ireland Executive pursuing the necessary legislative changes as quickly and as directly as possible. Otherwise, the derogation would not be renewed each year. So there were practical reasons why the bill couldn't be widened out, to do with the absence of ministers. But I suspect even with ministers throughout the whole period, there would have been clear motives provided by the UK government for passing a bill that minimised potential contention, did not add on other issues, and that directly pursued reclassification. The third question, the Minister has made her commitment to bring forward proposals and legislation. She's made that commitment to the Executive in the Assembly on the Housing Executive Sales Scheme. I think it might be best if I have more discussions with the Minister about timescale, etc., before I can brief the committee. As you appreciate, to do with the current arrangements and also the current position of a temporary minister, some of that work has been delayed. So I think it might be best if I do more work with the minister and then brief the committee on what will happen with that second set of proposals.
Okay, I can understand that position, Paul. Again, we're struggling to hear you very well. But could I just ask one final thing then, and that would be, what was the point in the second consultation? If it was, if there was not going to be legislation on it, or it wasn't going to be part of this legislation, there was no minister in place to say, go out and consult on this. What was the point of the second consultation exclusively on the right to buy scheme in the housing associations and housing executive?
To save time when ministers return, essentially. I mean, the first consultation had not substantially addressed the issue. It needed to be substantially addressed for reclassification. We had a...
But why include the housing executive?
Sorry?
Why include the Northern Ireland Housing Executive?
To be exhaustive. I mean, it's to also to be transparent. I mean, as indeed debate on this bill has shown, we will create a position where some tenants will have the right to buy and some will not.
But there was never the prospect of including it in the bill to address that inequality that concerned you so much.
There was never the prospect.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case. That the matter was considered. I mean, both consultations include a far greater number of proposals than clauses that ended up in the bill. Officials have been careful to be exhaustive in pursuing the objective of the executive. And then as the period without ministers unfolded, took decisions to try and be as ready as possible to save time when ministers came back in order to meet the terms of the derogation from the UK government.
Okay, no, thank you, Paul. That's me, Chair.
Okay, Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the apology. As we know, these committees are not just to cause problems, but they're also to assist the Minister. I appreciate the fact that you have acknowledged that there was a ball dropped somewhere, but could I perhaps suggest that in any other sort of line of work there would be a criteria that has to be met in each stage, and particularly when it comes to legislation there's a format for doing this. Could I suggest that there is perhaps on file, almost like a tick box exercise to say that every aspect of the legislative process is met and that that's shared out. I would say that my confidence in the department providing information to this committee hasn't been great so far, given I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago we received an enormous wealth of responses to letters that this committee had sent out all at one time. And given the fact that the Minister was spoken to on the 5th of April, I'm sure she expected her officials would continue on to do the work that they normally would do, but at this situation the consultation report wasn't provided to the committee. I just think if we can be productive and learn from this and move forward, it would be worthwhile then if perhaps whenever information is sent through from the department on legislation, that we can see like a timeline or a list of the actions that have been taken to date on the legislation. Whenever any of us are taking forward a private member's bill, there's certain processes that we have to comply with. I'm sure that's the same for yourselves. It might be useful in future just to prevent another ball from being dropped that's provided. But just moving on then to your paper, the ONS and the Housing Executive Sales Scheme. I understand the situation as it was and why it wasn't included within the legislation. I share Mark's frustration that we will be running in tandem with 2 different types of house sales schemes effectively going forward, which leads me on to the comment you've said about you'd need to discuss further with the Minister. And absolutely the Minister deserves her place and has the right to bring forward any proposals. However, what I would ask is, the situation of the Housing Executive Review per se has been on the table for quite some time. Is there any opportunity at some stage we can see a review of where that has been sitting at? And I would expect the Housing Executive's house sales scheme to be part of that review. It just seems to be at the moment, while COVID absolutely is interfering, there was a time before COVID and there will be a time after COVID, and it would be useful in advance of the next stage after COVID if we can maybe see an update to what has happened so far with the Housing Executive Review and that Housing Executive House Sales Scheme, just to know how far that has gone.
Absolutely, yeah. And on the first point you make, I will of course take those suggestions away. We were preparing. I mean, the question of the housing executive per se, and the future of the housing executive, and the commitments in New Decade, New Approach that commit the executive to tackling its significant investment challenge. These are all a major, very, very, very significant matters, and we were preparing significant advice for the Minister on this subject from the time that she arrived in January and until we were overtaken by the need to focus on business continuity and the response to COVID. So there is no question that has set back that highly pressing, urgent concern has set back the strategic concern a little. We have resumed that work in the department, and I can't give you a timescale, but we should be able to brief the committee as soon as possible. Once we've also undertaken engagement with the minister, it's a similar answer, if you like, to the sales scheme. And if it will incorporate it will touch on the future of the sales scheme, albeit that I believe our minister intended on the sales scheme that she herself in this mandate would be bringing forward proposals. So that would be a shorter timescale perhaps than the strategic question about the future of the housing executive.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if that's a bit incomplete, but that is where we are.
I'm just very aware that the Housing Executive, because of COVID, is faced with an enormous corporation tax bill, one that is, it could be twice as much as it was in previous years, because they haven't been able to mitigate against that cost through expenditure. And I'm just very aware that COVID has had a huge, as we all know, a huge implication on the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and the possible implications for future maintenance programmes. It's just quite worrying at this stage. So if at some stage we could get an update, that would be brilliant. Yeah.
Okay. On that particular issue, work has not stopped. We have continued to press the UK government for changes in its legislation to solve the corporation tax problem. And there are two ways to solve that problem: by devolved decisions involving the future of the housing executive that are maybe a long-term option, or there is pressing the UK government for what for it would be a minor amendment to its taxation legislation. And we have continued to do that for precisely the reasons you've just given.
Thank you.
Okay, I suppose just to add on from what Kelly said, I mean, at least 4 or 5 of us on this committee sat in the programme for government talks last year, where we were given various papers on housing reform and options papers, I suppose, more so than anything. So we know that there has been quite a bit of work done, and I know most certainly actually the present minister at the moment sat in those groups as well, and is very vocal when it comes to housing executive reform. So that will be something, then again, I think that we'll bring up tomorrow with the minister when I speak to her, about getting an up-to-date presentation then from yourselves in the department with where they are with any housing executive reform, because I know definitely we had various options papers put in front of us exactly this time last year. If we can remember back to PFG. Mark, did you want to come in?
Just to add a wee bit onto that we actually, at the earliest possible opportunity, maybe get the housing executive in here as well. I'm conscious we've been here 6 months and haven't seen them.
Paul, you can take that back to the department, and I'll certainly bring it up with the minister tomorrow, because just to keep her informed also as to what we want to do. Any other members in the room? Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we would always be ready to brief the committee right now on the problem and the potential solutions. I was, if you like, trying to think of a timescale where I might be able to say more than that.
Yeah, and I know, Paul, over the last number of weeks, committee very much has been looking at the COVID response and the impact of COVID, albeit I know there has been an impact on the housing executive as well when it comes to COVID. So we have been pretty busy with other things also. So nobody's at fault on this one. Any other members in the room before I go to the phones? Sinead, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, it's just, just in terms of the consultation response not coming to the committee, like that was very unfortunate, and I do accept the apology, but it led to unnecessary confusion for us as a committee. So, we'll accept the apology and park that and move on. Just in terms of the the accelerated passage, you know, because we spoke about how it's not ideal. You know, and I think, you know, we accept that the Minister obviously had valid reasons for not including the housing executive aspect in the bill. You know, and we have to hold her to that commitment in terms of the housing executive. And you know, and we will get the chance now to scrutinise that section of it, and I think this committee should welcome that.
Yep. Okay. Can I go to the phones? Fra, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, Sinead's just covered it.
Okay, Fra, thank you. Robin, anything you want to add?
No, Chair, I find myself very much in agreement with Mark and the Deputy Chair, so I don't have any further questions at this stage. Chair, could I just, I need to go on to another meeting, so could I just sign off at this stage?
Absolutely, Robin, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Paul, look, thank you for coming along and briefing us, and certainly we accept the apology, and we've moved on from that. So thank you, and we will no doubt see you very soon again, or speak to you very soon again, Paul. All right?
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, members, then will we move on from that, or is there anything anybody wanted us to pick up on that other than what we've already said? Everything's been said, I suppose, of way forward.
To reiterate the importance of us maybe getting the delegation in from the Housing Executive Chair.
Yeah, I think that, if we are being briefed on the way forward for the Housing Executive, I think the Housing Executive need to be in the room. Absolutely. They do. Okay, members, I'm going to move on then to agenda item number 7, which is SL1, the Local Government Accounts and Audit Coronavirus Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020. Members, you'll find this copy of this in page 133 of your meeting pack. The proposed rule will amend the Local Government Accounts and Audit Regulations by extending the deadlines for relevant authorities to certify and publish their annual accounts and supporting documents in relation to the financial year beginning the 1st of April 2019. So can I ask if members any comments they wish to make, or are they content that the rule be made?
Content.
Good stuff, thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is correspondence. Members, you'll find the correspondence memo on page 137 of your pack. If I could first go to the tabled paper. Yeah, page 7 of your table papers. Members, we've been provided with an email request from Glyn Roberts of Retail NI to brief the committee on ideas to regenerate towns and city centres post-COVID. Can I ask members, would you be content to invite Retail NI in to brief the meeting on the 8th of July?
Yes.
Content with that?
Sure, could I just say that perhaps it might be better before we do that, that we have an opportunity to hear from the new minister regarding the situation that we're facing across the Department of Communities, because I'm conscious that we're hearing a lot of presentations from a lot of groups that are putting very vocally forward their case as to why assistance is needed and a new way of thinking, and we're all sympathetic to that. But I would like to hear the department from the minister before we go into those more specific issues regarding whether it's the local town, high street, etc. That we hear a broad outline as to where we are within the department financially, because it is going to be a case that we will not be able to service the needs of everybody, albeit we want to try and help as far as we can as a committee, but I just don't want to build false hope. I would like to first of all hear clearly from the department the financial positions. Okay, and I get that, and I would be good if we could have the minister in front of us, and that's certainly then something that the clerk can take back and ask for the minister to come in and brief us. So then the way I will take these next items of correspondence is not for specific dates, but agreements then at the committee, and then we can work the dates out after that if we get the minister then to come in to brief the committee on taking over the role and how she's found things and her way forward. Yeah, I get that absolutely, and we will highlight that with her tomorrow in our conference meeting with her in the morning. Kelly, did you want to come in as well?
I appreciate actually the minister coming in. That's a fantastic idea. On the back of this correspondence, we've got yes, Retail NI, but I actually think that there's an important piece that we need to actually be writing to the Minister for Infrastructure or the Department of Infrastructure for clarification regarding high streets and the implications post-COVID. We had received sorry, apologies, I'm not sure which date it was. We had received information from IMTAC about high street accessibility, and Fra actually had mentioned it when we were discussing it last week about the impact on people who are blind or guide dogs. I'm very concerned at the moment about the reopening of high streets. The proposals that councils are having about taking forward licensing or not actually requiring a licence for on-street pavement cafes and so on, that means that there's no regulation or there's no controls in place of the space that should be available for people with accessibility issues. So it might be worthwhile. I'm just trying to think what's the best way. We've already had the paper from IMTAC, and we've obviously we have this request through from Glyn, but I think we need to get information from the Department of Infrastructure as to what their proposals are or solutions are for accessible pavements that we can take into consideration with.
Okay, well then I think we ask that first and foremost from a written briefing from the department to ask as well, and then once we receive the written briefing we can then look at that and see if we need them to come in then in person. So we'll not attach any dates to any of the correspondence, because there's a few of correspondence here that I would like, with your permission, to be briefed on. So we'll not attach any dates to them at this stage, but we'll. Is it on this? Is it on Retail NI? Okay, go ahead.
Exactly what Kelly had
Go
said.
ahead, John.
I have other points in IOB, so I was going to mention that one, but my point would be slightly different to Kelly's, albeit in the same vein. Look, I understand the complexities of the on-street in terms of cafes, etc., and accessibility to put seats because of the size and scales of their buildings and for them to be viable. And while we do have to take disability on board, absolutely, though I believe there is a way in which that can be provided. My problem is, and I've spoke to the Minister actually about this at the last Assembly sitting, and I know that a joint letter went from both Infrastructure and Communities Minister to encourage councils to show some form of flexibility. My problem has been, in my experience to date, is that councils haven't shown that degree of flexibility. I'm concerned about that. I think I tried to actually get in on questions to the Minister, but unfortunately we ran out of time. I know the Minister is very keen to see something forward in this. The councils are using and quoting coronavirus regulations to stop them being flexible, which totally is bizarre in any scale. So I think perhaps if you could at your meeting tomorrow and see if the Minister, jointly with the Infrastructure Minister, can, whether I assume that actually that it's already went through the executive, this form of flexibility for the high street, but we're not seeing it on the ground, and I would like to see something come more forcibly to ensure that councils do get.
And just don't forget, we've got Solace in next week as well, so that is something we can ask of Solace also.
Consistency across
councils.
It's the point is that Solace, by what some of the chief executives and councils have done, will quote at us some form of COVID regulation. Now, my understanding is that there is nothing in regulation to prevent that now, but the councils are quoting it. So we would need clarity from the Minister to ensure that they're at a position that can allow for flexibility to allow for some of these small traders to exist.
Okay,
because
well,
it's going to be crucial.
We'll bring that up in the meeting with the Minister tomorrow, and then I suppose then we can write to Solace as well to ask them or to tell them that this issue is going to be brought up, and if they could come back with a collective response as to, are they doing it collectively, or is each council deciding themselves. Okay, I want to move on. So we're not going to put a date on that, but we do need a briefing from Retail NI, and in general we want some extra paperwork to do with our towns and city centres and how that's going to look. Then if members could go to page 156 of your correspondence, it's a request from the NI Union of Supported Employment to brief us on the future programmes and funding of the disability employment services, given that the European Social Fund programme is coming to an end in March 2022. Again, I have a date down here, but I'm not going to put a date beside it. Are members content for a briefing on that also? Yes? Okay. And then to go on there, we do not have correspondence, but we've received a request from Nicola McCrudden, who many of you will know and remember, who is a consultant with Campbell to Kell. She's acting as a homeless sector COVID-19 liaison manager, working with the homelessness sector providers in the housing executive. She is asked to brief the committee on issues relating to COVID-19 and the homeless sector. I think that would be good, given on from our supporting people brief last week, where we talked about homelessness and how that's going to look going forward. You know, where are people going to be housed and how they're going to manage that. So if members are in agreement, we'll put that in for a date. So all of these dates we're looking at are sort of next week and the week after, to try and get them in. So that would be Nicola McCrudden then as well. Are members in agreement with that one? Yep. Kelly, did you want to come in on that?
It's just on, forgive me if I'm in the wrong place, but I think I'm in the right place. The correspondence, can I ask for an amendment, please? At the bottom of page 137, where we have the Committee for the Economy, we've got a letter that's been forwarded, and it says there, members may wish to write to the Economy Minister. At the very bottom there, it says young people with disabilities. We're not looking for that in the disability sector anymore, because young people, there are people with disabilities who are older who need access to employment opportunities as well. So it's just
All people.
we don't talk about, it's just people with disabilities. Please.
Okay, we can amend that. That's not a problem. Okay, members. So, do any other members have any issue on the correspondence memo as amended? Everybody in agreement with what's been said so far? Is that fine? Yes.
Yeah.
Good. All agreed. Then I'll go to item number 9, which is our forward work programme, which is a little bit up in the air now as to what's written down here. But you'll know that next week Solace will be here to provide an update. And then we've asked Nicola then to come in then next week as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah, that's the plan. Then Nicola McCrudden and Solace will be in next week, and then Retail NI and NI Union of Supported Employment will be slotted in. We would hope then we'd get the Minister here as well. So members content with that forward work programme as it sits at the moment, yeah? Okay, I'm going to move on to any other business. Item number 10, Johnny, you had said earlier you had something you wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, I suppose, one point has been raised through Kelly, but just another, just probably from the committee's perspective, is there any reason now where, for example, I found it very hard with Paul, I think his name was, from the department. Is there any reason why department officials can't come into the building to brief the committee? You know, I understand the need at the beginning of the quiz, but I see a lot of other committees where they're having a lot of department officials attending their committees. I think it would, for something as like the points that was raised within the letter.
That was a bit of a struggle. It was like listening to the radio crossing the Glen Shane.
Certainly something that I would think that, you know, there should be before the committee to allow us to, you know, it's an important point that needed clarity.
Well, I suppose, we have to be mindful that we will have some departmental officials here shielding as well. So, and we would be mindful of that. And actually, we have an awful lot of people in the room today. So, yeah.
That's been the normal sound.
No,
that's the normal sound quality, yeah.
That's one point. And the other one is in relation to, I'm sure other members have, but I've had quite a lot of correspondence from those that operate fitness facilities and gyms. Now, this falls under the remit of the Minister here, and I know it's a wider executive control decision, but look, I would like us as a committee to write to the executive and the Minister to try and get some form of clarity for gym owners and operators. A lot of them have went to a considerable deal of expense to kit out their gyms, whether it even be by appointment basis or whatever, and they're extremely frustrated because they've watched how other sectors have been able to move towards a reopening date, albeit on a controlled basis, and they're sitting in limbo. And it's something that I believe has not received fair attention. Probably as a committee, we've been very focused on the COVID-19 response, but we have to be mindful that a lot of these sectors fall under our committee and the Minister's responsibility, and I believe that we should be lobbying to that effect to give clarity.
Especially given that health benefits.
Of course, it's, you know, health and mental health, physical and mental well-being is crucial, and it's something that I think that this committee should be taking up with Ernest to try and get some clarity on the matter. It's just,
I suppose in addition to that, I know I've been contacted as well, and we've also got the Lost City Adventure Golf in North Belfast, who've put in fantastic measures for social distancing, and they still haven't had any whether or not they can open as well as a leisure facility. So it's asking, I suppose, those questions as to ask the minister.
Golf.
No, but there's also, but then there's bookmakers. There's various things that fall under the Department for Communities. So, if we could maybe then ask the minister, I don't mind if people are in agreement. Just to what progress is being made on that, and even timescales. I think a lot of these people, if they knew a timescale, and I know it's hard to put a timescale on something, then they can prepare and plan, and that gives them a little bit of hope in these uncertain times that they may be able to open on a date.
It's probably a realisation, and this is going to be across all sectors, it can't be a one-size-fits-all policy, because the nature and size and scale of their buildings will depend on how they operate going forward. They're aware of that, but they're very aggrieved and angered that they're not even being given the opportunity to adopt a policy, albeit with social distancing, that can suit the means and needs of their individual business or entity.
Should have been based on premises and practice rather than
individual
profession.
appointments, etc. You know.
Well, I mean, we can write to the minister as a committee and ask on that leisure side. What plans she has for that. Kelly, did you want something?
Yeah, I was just going to follow in the back of that. There is a bigger issue here, and Solus is coming in next week. We can tie in with that. Summer schemes are due to come back, and they may well be inside. Yeah. So we need to be very clear. If there's council running summer schemes, what's the difference in a council running a summer scheme? A kids run about inside kicking a ball about or doing whatever, and a gym.
Yeah.
So there are concerns there.
I also seen it on national TV, I think it was yesterday, the representation of the swimming fraternity and how, they've looked on how bars have been able to reopen, and for many people that's a sociable element as well, but for a health and mental well-being, swimming with the chlorine, etc., there should be more. It doesn't make sense, that's what I'm trying to say, and I think we as a committee need to start championing the needs of our sector to try and give them clarity going forward.
Okay, we'll do that. Any other business? Even anything from you, Fra?
Oh, sure.
Okay, happy enough? All right. Okay, members, we'll move on then to agenda item number 11, which is date time of next meeting. Can I advise you the next meeting will take place on Wednesday, the 1st of July, and that will be at 2 p.m. here back in room 29. So, members, thank you. So if you could just keep on the line, Fra. With your permission, I'm going to close this part of the committee down to the public. We need to have a discussion around something else in closed session. So, members, okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 29.